The security guard glanced at the invitation and let out a quiet scoff. The service entrance is around the back. The black man looked down at his rain-soaked suit, its worn shoulders revealing years of hard work. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply held out the invitation again, sealed with the official gold emblem of the mayor's office. But they never even bothered to check the guest list. What no one inside that glamorous ballroom knew was that the very man they had just turned away was the one the entire city had gathered to honor that night. And within minutes, when the mayor walked straight toward him, everyone in that room would realize they had made a mistake they could never take back. They refused to let the black man enter. Until the mayor walked straight toward him, service entrance is around the back. The security guard did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The words landed with the smooth confidence of a door being locked. Isaiah Brooks stood beneath the marble archway of Bellwether Hall, rainwater darkening the shoulders of his charcoal suit. Behind the glass doors, chandeliers burned above a sea of silk dresses, black tuxedos, crystal glasses, and polished smiles. A string quartet played somewhere beyond the lobby, each note softened by thick carpets and expensive walls. Isaiah looked down at the cream-colored invitation in his hand. The gold seal was beginning to curl from the ring. "I'm here for the Civic Leadership Gala," he said. The guard glanced at the invitation without touching it. "Deliveries go around back." "I'm not making a delivery." A second guard stepped closer. He was younger, broad through the shoulders, with a clear earpiece curled behind one ear. His name tag read M. Dalton. "Sir, this is a private event." "I know." Isaiah held the invitation out again. This time Dalton took it. He turned it over as though expecting to find a grocery list on the back. Then he studied Isaiah's face, his close-cropped hair, the faint scar beneath his left eye, and finally his shoes. They were clean but old. The leather had been polished so many times that the creases had become permanent. Dalton handed the invitation back. "Where did you get this?" Isaiah's jaw tightened. "It was mailed to me." "By whom?" "The mayor's office." The first guard gave a quiet laugh. Not loud enough to be called laughter, just enough to make its meaning clear. People moved through the entrance beside them. A silver-haired couple presented their names and were waved inside. A young white man in a velvet jacket had forgotten his invitation entirely, but one of the guards recognized his father's last name and opened the door with a smile. Warm light spilled across the wet pavement. Then the door closed again. Isaiah remained outside. He could smell rain on stone, the faint oil of passing cars, and the aftershave of men who had not been asked where. They got their invitations. Dalton lowered his voice. "Let's not make this difficult." "I'm not making it difficult. You're blocking the entrance." Isaiah looked behind him. There was no one waiting. He moved half a step aside anyway. The rain ran from the edge of the awning in silver threads. Somewhere across the street, a city bus released its brakes with a long mechanical sigh. Isaiah folded the invitation once, carefully, then slipped it inside his coat. "I would like you to check the guest list." Dalton's expression hardened. "We already told you." "You looked at me," Isaiah said. "You didn't check the list." The first guard's smile vanished. For one moment, no one moved. Then Dalton leaned closer. "You need to lower your tone." Isaiah's voice had not risen. That was the part that hurt most. He had learned long ago that a black man did not have to shout to be accused of aggression. Sometimes all he had to do was refuse to shrink. Inside the lobby, a woman wearing a red gown slowed near the glass. Her eyes moved from Isaiah to the guards. She watched for 2 seconds. Then she turned away. Isaiah breathed through his nose. Slowly. In. Out. His mother had taught him that when he was 12, after a police officer had shoved him against a grocery store wall because someone nearby had reported a stolen wallet. "Don't let another person's fear decide who you become," she had whispered later, holding ice against his cheek. But don't confuse calm with surrender. He had carried those words for 32 years. Tonight, they felt heavier than the rain. Isaiah had not wanted to attend the gala. 3 months earlier, when the invitation arrived at the small brick building on Mercer Street, he had left it unopened beneath a stack of utility bills. Galas belonged to people who discussed poverty beneath chandeliers and left before the buses stopped running. Men like Isaiah were usually invited to set up chairs, carry trays, or stand in photographs as evidence that someone powerful cared. He had seen enough of that kind of care. But the envelope had contained a handwritten note. "Mr. Brooks, Your work has changed this city in ways most people will never see. I hope you will allow us to honor you properly." Mayor Eleanor Whitmore, he had read it 3 times. Then he had placed it back inside the envelope and gone upstairs to check on the children. The Mercer Street Community Center occupied what had once been an abandoned fire station in Ward 8. The roof leaked in 2 places. The heating system complained through winter like an old man with bad knees. Half the windows had been donated by a construction company after Isaiah spent 6 months calling them every Tuesday. But every afternoon, the building came alive. Children filled the old truck bay with basketballs, homework sheets, paintbrushes, and noise. Teenagers learned basic carpentry in the former equipment room. Retired nurses offered health screenings on Saturdays. Mothers working late shifts left their children there because Isaiah never charged them when they could not pay. There was always soup in the kitchen. There was always a lamp burning near the front desk. And if a child arrived with nowhere safe to sleep, Isaiah found a place. Sometimes it was a shelter bed. Sometimes it was a church basement. Twice, it had been the couch in his own office. People called him generous. He disliked the word. Generosity sounded optional. What he did felt necessary. He knew the children who came through Mercer Street because he had once been one of them. He had grown up 5 blocks from the center in an apartment where the pipes rattled brown water and sirens became part of the night. His father disappeared before Isaiah learned to read. His mother, Laverne Brooks, cleaned offices downtown until arthritis curled her fingers and cancer emptied her body. She never owned a car. She never attended a gala. But she kept canned peaches for hungry neighbors and spare blankets for children who claimed they were only staying one night. When Isaiah was 19, he wanted to leave Bellwether forever. He wanted distance from the cracked sidewalks and tired faces that reminded him of every door that had closed. His mother stopped him at the bus station. She did not ask him to stay. She only said, "Wherever you go, don't become the kind of man who forgets who couldn't go with him." He left. Anyway, he joined the army, became a medic, and learned how fragile the human body was beneath uniforms, flags, languages, and skin. He returned 12 years later with a damaged knee, a quiet voice, and a habit of waking before dawn. By then, his mother was gone. Mercer Street had become a graveyard of boarded windows. Isaiah used his savings to buy the abandoned fire station from the city for $1 under a redevelopment agreement no one expected him to fulfill. He fulfilled it. He slept on a folding cot during the first winter. He repaired pipes with online videos and borrowed tools. He carried rotten timber out by hand. When the city denied his first grant application, he rewrote it. When they denied the second, he sat outside the funding office until someone agreed to explain why. 6 years later, the Mercer Street Community Center served more than 400 families. Still, some donors shook his hand and asked to speak to the person in charge. Tonight, Bellwether planned to give him the Holloway Medal for civic courage. He had almost refused. Then one of the children at the center, a 9-year-old girl named Nia, overheard him talking about the invitation. "You have to go," she said. "Why?" "Because they need to see you." Isaiah smiled. "You see me. That's different." "How?" Nia looked at him with the impatience children reserve for adults who made simple things complicated. "They need to see somebody like you standing where they think you don't belong." So Isaiah had borrowed a tie from Deacon Harris, taken his only suit to a cleaner, and closed the center early. Now he stood outside the gala while 2 guards decided whether his invitation could possibly belong to him. Dalton touched the radio near his collar. "I'm asking you one last time to move away from the entrance. Check the guest list." "Sir, check it." The first guard stepped forward. His hand did not touch Isaiah, but it hovered close to his arm. A warning. Isaiah looked at the hand. Then he looked at the guard. "I wouldn't do that." The lobby doors opened behind them. A hotel manager appeared, her expression already sharpened by irritation. She wore a black dress, a silver badge, and the strained smile of someone whose greatest fear was unpleasantness in front of wealthy guests. "What seems to be the issue?" Dalton answered without taking his eyes off Isaiah. "This gentleman is insisting he's attending the gala." "I am attending the gala." The manager looked him over. It happened quickly. Suit, shoes, skin, age, reign. A whole judgment assembled in less than a breath. "Do you have identification?" Isaiah reached into his coat. Both guards stiffened. He froze. The movement was tiny, but he saw it. Their shoulders changed. Dalton's hand moved closer to his belt. Isaiah slowly withdrew his wallet using 2 fingers. The manager did not seem to notice what had just happened. He handed her his driver's license. Isaiah Brooks, she read. Her gaze moved to the tablet on the podium just inside the doors. For the first time, Isaiah felt the tension in his chest loosen. She could type the name. The screen would confirm it. The evening could continue. But instead of touching the tablet, she returned the license. I'm afraid Mr. Brooks has likely already arrived. Isaiah stared at her. What? She gave him a patient smile. The award recipient. Mr. Brooks. His organization has worked closely with city officials. He would have been escorted through the east entrance. I am Mr. Brooks. The first guard looked away to hide another smile. Isaiah felt something inside him go very still. Not anger. Anger was hot. This was colder. The manager lowered her voice. Sir, falsely representing a guest is a serious matter. For a moment, Isaiah could hear every sound around him separately. Rain tapping the awning. A violin behind glass. A champagne flute touching a tray. The buzzing electrical hum above the entrance. He looked at the manager's face and realized she truly believed she was being reasonable. I gave you my identification, he said, and I am trying to avoid embarrassing you. You're not trying to avoid embarrassing me. Her smile tightened. Excuse me. You're trying to avoid being wrong about me. Dalton took Isaiah by the elbow. Not violently. That almost made it worse. His grip was firm, practiced, and familiar. The kind used to move furniture. Or steer someone who was not expected to resist. Isaiah's body reacted before his mind did. His shoulders locked. His breath shortened. For half a second, the marble entrance disappeared, and he was 19 again, face down on summer pavement while an officer's knee pressed against his spine because Isaiah had matched a description that turned out to be a blue shirt. He forced himself back into the present. Take your hand off me. You need to leave. Take your hand off me. Guests were watching now. Not many. Enough. A man in a tuxedo stopped near the glass with a drink in his hand. 2 women whispered beside a floral display. Someone lifted a phone, though Isaiah could not tell whether they were recording or checking a message. The manager's voice became sharper. Mr. Dalton, escort him from the property. Isaiah did not pull away. He could have. Dalton was large, but Isaiah had spent years lifting wounded soldiers, rebuilding walls, and breaking up fights between frightened boys pretending not to be frightened. He knew how to shift his weight. He knew how to make a wrist release a grip. But every eye was waiting for him to become the danger they had already imagined. So he stood still. I was invited here, he said. The manager sighed. People like you always say that. The words left her mouth before she could catch them. The rain seemed to stop. Dalton's hand loosened slightly. The manager blinked, as if she herself had heard what she said from across the room. Isaiah looked at her. People like me? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. He could have raised his voice then. He could have demanded names, called reporters, threatened lawsuits, turned the entrance into a spectacle large enough that no one could look away. Instead, he reached into his coat again, slower this time, and removed the folded invitation. The damp paper had softened at the edges. He looked at the gold seal, then at the lights inside. Nia's words returned to him. They need to see somebody like you standing where they think you don't belong. Isaiah unfolded the invitation. Then he tore it in half. The sound was quiet. 2 pieces. Then 4. He placed them into the manager's hand. You can tell the mayor I couldn't get in. Dalton released his arm. Isaiah straightened his sleeve. He did not curse. He did not threaten. He did not give them the satisfaction of watching him lose control. He turned and walked into the rain. Behind him, the quartet continued playing. The city shone wet and golden beneath the street lamps. Water gathered along the curb, carrying cigarette filters, flower petals, and torn scraps of paper toward the storm drains. Isaiah walked without opening his umbrella. His left knee ached before he reached the corner. He kept going. Back at Bellwether Hall, the gala had already moved toward its first speech. Mayor Eleanor Whitmore stood near the ballroom stage, listening with half an ear as the president of the Chamber of Commerce praised the resilient spirit of our most underserved neighborhoods. She had heard the phrase many times. It sounded polished and meant almost nothing. Her assistant, Lena Cho, approached through the crowd with a phone in one hand and worry in her face. He isn't here. Eleanor glanced toward the entrance. Who? Isaiah Brooks. He confirmed this morning. I know. Did his car have trouble? He doesn't own a car. The mayor looked at her. Lena continued. We sent a driver. He declined. Said he was taking the number 6 bus. Eleanor checked the clock. The award presentation was 12 minutes away. Call him. I did. It went to voicemail. Call the center. No answer. Eleanor scanned the ballroom. Council members, judges, developers, editors, donors, people who could make one phone call and change the direction of public money. Isaiah's empty chair sat near the front. A white card marked Mr. Isaiah Brooks rested against a folded napkin. Eleanor felt irritation first, then concern. She had met Isaiah Brooks 2 years earlier after a winter storm shut down half the city. A transformer failure left Ward 8 without power for 3 nights. The official emergency shelter did not open because a city contractor failed to deliver generators. Mercer Street opened anyway. Isaiah found portable heaters, borrowed buses, and coordinated insulin storage for elderly residents. When the mayor arrived, with cameras on the second day, he refused to stand beside her until every person in the building had received hot food. Later, in a supply room smelling of wet coats and canned soup, he told her, "Don't thank us for surviving what your office failed to prevent." No one spoke to Eleanor Whitmore that way. Not donors, not council members, not even her political enemies, who usually wrapped insults in statistics. She respected him immediately. Months later, when a developer attempted to purchase 3 blocks around Mercer Street, Isaiah organized tenants, studied zoning maps, and exposed a clause that would have displaced more than 200 families. He never asked to be praised. He asked for the policy to change. The city changed it. The Holloway medal had been Eleanor's idea, not because Isaiah needed validation from City Hall, but because City Hall needed to say his name in public. A hotel server passed. Eleanor caught her attention. "Has Mr. Brooks arrived?" The young woman looked confused. "The award recipient?" "Yes." "I don't believe so, Mayor. Check the entrance." The server hurried away. On stage, the chamber president made a joke. The ballroom laughed. Eleanor did not. 30 seconds later, the server returned with the hotel manager. The manager's face was pale. "Mayor Whitmore, where is Isaiah Brooks?" "I'm not certain." "What does that mean?" "There was a misunderstanding at the front entrance." Lena's expression changed. Eleanor felt something heavy settle in her stomach. What kind of misunderstanding? The manager looked around at the nearby guests. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately." "No, Mayor, tell me now." The manager swallowed. A man presented an invitation. Security could not verify that he was a guest. "What man?" He said he was Mr. Brooks. The music, the conversation, and the clinking glasses seemed to recede around Eleanor. "Was he a black man?" she asked. "About 6 feet tall, 44 years old, scar under his left eye?" The manager's lips parted. Lena closed her eyes. Eleanor stepped closer. "What did you do?" "We followed security protocol." "Did you check the guest list?" Silence. "Did you check his identification?" He presented a license. But what? "We believe the actual Mr. Brooks had already entered." Eleanor stared at her. The manager's face began to collapse beneath the weight of her own explanation. "What made you believe that?" Eleanor asked. No answer. "What happened to him?" "He left." "Did he leave?" Eleanor said. "Or was he removed?" The manager looked toward the entrance. That was enough. Eleanor walked past her. "Mayor," Lena said, following. "You're due on stage. Cancel the schedule. The room is full." "Then they can wait." The mayor crossed the ballroom quickly. Heads turned. Conversations broke apart in her wake. The chamber president paused behind the microphone, unsure whether to continue. Eleanor pushed through the lobby doors. Cold rain blew beneath the awning. The 2 security guards stood near the podium. Dalton's face changed when he saw her. "Where did he go?" she asked. Neither guard pretended not to understand. Dalton pointed toward Mercer Avenue. "He left about 10 minutes ago." "On foot?" "Yes, ma'am." "Did either of you touch him?" The first guard lowered his eyes. Dalton said nothing. Eleanor stepped out into the rain. Lena hurried behind her, opening an umbrella. The mayor pushed it away. "Get the car." "Where are you going?" "To find him." News traveled through the ballroom faster than any formal announcement. By the time Eleanor reached the curb, guests had crowded near the windows. Phones appeared. The quartet stopped playing one instrument at a time until only the cellist remained, drawing a final uncertain note across the room. Eleanor's black sedan pulled forward. She opened the rear door, then stopped. A block away, Beneath the blurred glow of a pharmacy sign, a solitary man waited at a bus shelter. Rain shone on his shoulders. His head was bowed. The number 6 bus was approaching in the distance. Eleanor closed the car door. Then she walked straight toward him. At first, Isaiah did not notice her. He stood beneath the narrow shelter, though the wind pushed rain through the open side. A digital advertisement flickered behind him, changing from a luxury apartment campaign to an image of the mayor smiling. Beside the words, "One city, one future," Isaiah stared at the slogan. He almost laughed. His phone had vibrated twice in his pocket. He ignored it. He was thinking about Nia and what he would tell her tomorrow. That he had gone. That he had stood there. That they still had not seen him. He heard footsteps splashing through shallow water. Isaiah. He looked up. Mayor Eleanor Whitmore was crossing the street without an umbrella. Her silver hair, usually precise, clung to her forehead. The hem of her dark green gown brushed the wet pavement beneath her coat. Her assistant followed several steps behind. A city vehicle waited at the curb, lights flashing softly in the rain. Isaiah straightened. "Mayor." Eleanor stopped in front of him. She was breathing hard. Not from the distance. From anger. "I am sorry." Isaiah looked toward Bellwether Hall. People had gathered beneath the awning. Even from a block away, he could see the glow of phone screens. "You didn't stop me," he said. "No, you invited me." "Yes. And your name wasn't enough to get me through the door." Eleanor did not defend herself. Rain ran along her cheek. "I should have made sure you were received personally. You shouldn't have to escort a black man into a building for people to believe he belongs there." "No," she said. "I shouldn't." The bus drew closer, its headlights widening across the wet street. Isaiah rubbed his thumb against the edge of his palm, where Dalton's fingers had pressed. Eleanor saw the movement. "Did they hurt you?" He gave a tired smile. That's always the first question people ask when they're hoping the answer is no. Her face tightened. Isaiah looked away. "They didn't hit me. But they harmed you." He said nothing. The bus pulled to the curb. Its doors folded open. Warm yellow light filled the shelter. The driver glanced from Isaiah to the mayor. Isaiah took one step forward. Eleanor did not block him. She only said, "You have every right to leave." He stopped. "But I am asking you to come back." "Why?" "Because the award is yours." "I don't need a medal." "I know." "Then why?" Eleanor looked toward the ballroom windows. "Because everyone in that building needs to see." "What happened?" Isaiah followed her gaze. The guards stood beneath the archway. The hotel manager was beside them, arms folded tightly across her chest. Guests watched from behind glass that reflected chandeliers over the dark street. "They already saw," he said. "No," Eleanor replied. "They watched." "That isn't the same as seeing." The bus driver waited. Isaiah looked through the open doors at the nearly empty rows. He imagined sitting by the window, returning to Mercer Street, hanging his wet suit in the office, and letting the evening disappear. It would be peaceful. It would also be easy for everyone inside Bellwether Hall. They would release a statement. They would call it an unfortunate misunderstanding. The manager would attend a training session. The guards might be reassigned. The gala would continue. By morning, the city would move on. Isaiah thought of Neo again. They need to see somebody like you standing where they think you don't belong. He stepped back from the bus. The driver closed the doors. The vehicle pulled away with a hiss, leaving red light trembling on the wet road. Eleanor said nothing. Isaiah buttoned his coat. "I'm not going back in for the medal." "All right." "I'm not shaking hands with people who watch me get dragged away." "All right." "And no one calls it a misunderstanding." Eleanor nodded. "What do we call it?" "What it was." The walk back took less than 2 minutes. It felt longer. The mayor and Isaiah crossed the street side by side, Lena following behind. No umbrella covered them. Rain darkened Eleanor's coat and streamed from Isaiah's sleeves. The crowd beneath the awning parted. Dalton stood near the door. For the first time that evening, he looked directly at Isaiah without suspicion. Now there was fear in his eyes. Isaiah did not enjoy it. Fear was not respect. He stopped in front of the guards. No one spoke. Mayor Whitmore looked at Dalton. "Open the door." He opened it immediately. Warm air rushed over them. Isaiah remained outside. The ballroom beyond the lobby had gone silent. Hundreds of faces turned toward the entrance. The stage lights glowed above an empty podium. Eleanor stepped inside, but Isaiah did not. "Follow." She turned. He looked at the doorway. The same marble. The same gold light. The same men in uniform. Nothing had changed except who was standing beside him. That was precisely the problem. Eleanor seemed to understand. She stepped back outside. Then, before the guards, the manager, the cameras, and the waiting guests, the mayor extended her hand toward Isaiah. Not to pull him, not to present him, only to offer it. Isaiah looked at her hand. Then he looked through the doors at the people inside. He did not take it. He walked in on his own. The ballroom remained silent as he entered. Water fell from his coat onto the marble floor, each drop briefly visible beneath the chandelier light. He moved past the floral arrangements, past the servers holding silver trays, past council members who suddenly found it difficult to meet his eyes. A woman in a red gown, the same woman who had watched from the lobby, lowered her glass. The chamber president stepped away from the podium. Isaiah reached the front of the room. His name card still waited at the table. He did not sit. Eleanor approached the microphone. No one applauded. She looked across the ballroom, her face stripped of its ceremonial smile. Tonight, she began, we gathered to honor a man for his courage, his service, and his refusal to abandon people this city has too often ignored. She paused. Then this city ignored him at the door. A murmur passed through the room. Eleanor continued. Mr. Isaiah Brooks arrived with an invitation bearing my office's seal. He presented identification. He asked for his name to be checked. Instead, he was treated as a threat, accused of falsely representing himself, and physically removed from the entrance. The hotel manager stared at the floor. Dalton remained visible through the lobby doors. This was not a misunderstanding, Eleanor said. It was discrimination. The word changed the room. Some guests shifted uneasily. Others lowered their heads. A few looked toward the cameras with the instinctive concern of people calculating how visible they might become. Eleanor turned to Isaiah. I invited you here to receive an award. But after what happened, I have no right to ask you to accept anything from this room. She stepped away from the microphone. The silence waited for him. Isaiah had spoken before crowds many times. At school board meetings, funeral vigils, budget hearings, church basements, street corners lit by candles after someone's child did not come home. But this room felt different. The people before him controlled foundations, construction contracts, newspapers, banks, hospitals, and courts. They were accustomed to deciding which problems deserved attention and which voices sounded credible. Isaiah removed his wet coat. Lena took it from him. He walked to the podium. For several seconds, he said nothing. The microphone carried the sound of his breathing. My mother cleaned buildings like this, he said at last. His voice was quiet. The room leaned toward it. She entered through loading docks. She ate lunch beside mop buckets. She knew the names of executives who never learned hers. A man near the front lowered his eyes. When I was a child, I thought the front door was just a door. I didn't understand that some doors are used to teach people where society believes they belong. Isaiah glanced toward the lobby. Tonight, I came through the front door with an invitation. It didn't matter. I showed identification. It didn't matter. I stayed calm. That didn't matter either. His hand rested against the podium. The mayor came outside, and suddenly the same suit fit me differently. The same invitation became believable. The same man became safe. No one moved. That is not respect. That is borrowed permission. The words settled heavily beneath the chandeliers. Isaiah looked at the manager. She raised her face slowly. I don't believe everyone who judged me tonight woke up planning to humiliate a black man. Her eyes filled. That may make you feel better, he continued. It should not. A few breaths caught across the room. Prejudice does not always announce itself with hatred. Sometimes it wears a uniform and says it is following procedure. Sometimes it smiles and says it is trying not to embarrass you. Sometimes it calls itself caution, professionalism, policy, or instinct. He paused. But the result is the same. One person is asked to prove what everyone else is allowed to assume. The manager's shoulders shook once. Isaiah could feel anger inside himself, but it had changed shape. It no longer burned wildly. It had become something precise enough to hold. I was going to leave, he said. Part of me still wishes I had. He looked toward the ballroom doors. But there are children at Mercer Street who have been followed through stores, stopped on sidewalks, underestimated in classrooms, and treated as dangerous before they were old enough to understand the word. His voice tightened. They need to know dignity is not the reward for being accepted. Dignity is what no one has the right to take. A woman near the back began to cry quietly. Isaiah did not soften the truth for her. I will not accept the Holloway medal tonight. A stir moved through the room. Eleanor bowed her head, as though she had expected the decision. But I will accept something else. Isaiah reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded sheet of paper. It was not part of a plan. It was a document he had carried for weeks, hoping to discuss it privately with 2 donors after the ceremony. He opened it on the podium. Mercer Street has been trying to purchase the vacant library building beside our center. We want to turn it into transitional housing for young adults leaving foster care. The city has delayed the sale for 14 months. Eleanor looked at Lena. Lena's eyes widened. Isaiah continued. The building remains empty while young people sleep in cars, train stations, and emergency rooms. He placed the paper on the podium. If this room wants to honor service, then stop honoring people and start supporting the work. The words struck harder than applause would have. Mayor Whitmore stepped back toward the microphone. The city will transfer the building to Mercer Street for $1. Lena leaned toward her. Mayor, the council approval. I will introduce the resolution Monday, Eleanor said. And I will publicly name every vote. A low murmur passed through the room. Isaiah looked at her. That is a beginning. Yes, she said. Only a beginning. From the front table, an elderly man rose. His name was Arthur Vale, president of Vale National Bank and one of the wealthiest people in Bellwether. My foundation will fund the renovation. Isaiah studied him. Without naming rights. Vale hesitated. A few nervous smiles appeared. Then the banker nodded. Without naming rights. A woman who operated 3 medical clinics stood next. We can provide counseling services for the residents. Another voice followed. Then another. Job training. Legal support. Furniture. Scholarships. Isaiah listened, but he did not smile. He had attended enough charity events to know promises were easiest beneath chandeliers. Put it in writing, he said. The room fell quiet again. Arthur Vale gave a slow nod. Tomorrow. Monday, Isaiah replied. Tomorrow is Sunday. For the first time that night, a small ripple of genuine laughter moved through the ballroom. It did not erase anything, but it allowed the room to breathe. Near the lobby, the hotel manager stepped forward. Mr. Brooks. Isaiah turned. She approached without the guards. Her hands were empty. Up close, she looked older than she had at the entrance. The confidence had left her face. My name is Margaret Ellis, she said. I should have introduced myself before I judged you. Isaiah waited. What I said to you was wrong. What I allowed was wrong. I was more concerned with protecting the comfort of the event than with protecting your dignity. Her voice trembled. I am sorry. The room watched. Isaiah could have destroyed her with a sentence. He could have told her that remorse arrived conveniently after the mayor, the cameras, and the entire ballroom turned against her. It would have been true. Instead, he asked, how long have you worked here? 11 years. How many people enter through the service door every day? She blinked. I don't know. Learn their names. Margaret's lips parted. Isaiah continued. Not for a week. Not until the reporters leave. Learn who keeps this place standing. Ask them which doors they are told to use. Ask what happens when guests insult them. Ask how often security assumes they don't belong. Tears gathered along her lower lashes. And when they tell you. Isaiah said, don't explain. Listen. Margaret nodded. I will. That's not forgiveness. I understand. It's an opportunity to become someone who deserves it. She lowered her head. Thank you. Isaiah looked toward Dalton. The guard stood frozen beneath the lobby archway. Both guards are suspended, Margaret said quickly. Pending termination. Isaiah's face hardened. Did you train them? She looked startled. The hotel provides security protocols. Did those protocols tell them to check the guest list? Yes. Did they? No, did you? Margaret swallowed. No. Then don't offer me 2 guards so everyone else can pretend the problem started with them. No one in the ballroom moved. Margaret looked at Dalton, then back at Isaiah. You're right. I know. The answer was not cruel. It was tired. Isaiah stepped away from the podium. The formal ceremony never resumed. Dinner remained untouched on many tables. The orchestra packed its instruments quietly. Guests gathered in smaller groups, speaking without their earlier ease. Some approached Isaiah to apologize. Others thanked him for his courage, a phrase that sounded different after he had explained what courage cost. He accepted no praise. He spoke to the clinic director about counseling rooms. He gave Arthur Vale the name of the architect who had volunteered initial plans. He made Lena promise to schedule the council hearing in Ward 8 rather than downtown. Near midnight, the ballroom had nearly emptied. Rain still tapped softly against the windows. Isaiah stood alone near the lobby entrance, holding his dry coat over one arm. His suit had wrinkled. His tie hung slightly loose. Mayor Whitmore joined him. "The medal will remain in my office," she said. He looked at the velvet box in her hand. "Donate the medal." "To what?" "The center needs new kitchen pans." Eleanor laughed once, then realized he was serious. "All right." They stood in silence. Across the lobby, Dalton had removed his security badge. He waited beside Margaret while a supervisor completed paperwork. He looked younger without authority clipped to his chest. As Isaiah moved toward the door, Dalton stepped forward. "Mr. Brooks." Margaret tensed. Isaiah stopped. Dalton's voice was low. "I knew I should check the list." Isaiah said nothing. "I saw your ID." "I knew." "Then why didn't you?" Dalton looked toward the floor. "Because when Ms. Ellis doubted you, it made my doubt feel justified." The honesty surprised them both. Dalton rubbed one hand over the other. "My father used to say you could tell when somebody didn't belong somewhere. I always thought I was good at reading people." "You weren't reading me," Isaiah said. "You were reading what you were taught to fear." Dalton nodded slowly. "I'm sorry." Isaiah looked at the man's hands. The same hand had closed around his arm less than 3 hours earlier. For one moment, Isaiah remembered the pavement from his youth. The officer's knee. His mother's cold cloth against his face. He could have walked away. Instead, he asked, "Do you have children?" "A son. He's 6. What do you teach him about people who look like me?" Dalton's eyes lifted. "I don't know. That's the problem." The words struck deeper than shouting. Dalton's face tightened with shame. Isaiah opened the lobby door. Cold night air entered the building. Behind him, Dalton said, "Can I come to Mercer Street sometime?" Isaiah looked back. To apologize? To help? Isaiah considered him. Saturday morning. 7 o'clock. Dalton blinked. That early? The roof leaks early. For the first time, something almost human passed between them. Not friendship. Not forgiveness. A beginning. "If you come," Isaiah said, "don't bring cameras." "I won't. And don't wear the uniform." Dalton looked down at his white shirt and empty badge clip. "No, sir." Isaiah stepped outside. The rain had thinned to mist. Mayor Whitmore offered him a ride again. He declined. The last number 6 bus would arrive in 11 minutes. He walked to the shelter alone. This time, no one followed him. Across the city, Mercer Street was dark except for the lamp above the front desk. Isaiah had forgotten to turn it off. Its glow filled the lower windows with a soft amber light. When he arrived, he unlocked the red door and entered. The old building smelled of wood dust, basketball rubber, soup, and rain-soaked coats. Home. On the desk sat a handmade card from Nia. She had drawn Isaiah beneath a giant chandelier. Around him stood people in fancy clothes. In the picture, he was taller than all of them. Above his head, in purple marker, she had written, "You belong anywhere you help people." Isaiah sat down slowly. Only then did he allow his shoulders to fall. Only then did the pain move through him. Not loudly. It came as a single breath that broke before it left his chest. He covered his eyes with one hand. The building remained still around him. No speeches. No applause. No cameras. Just an old fire station holding the quiet weight of everything he had refused to become. If this moment touched your heart, remember Isaiah not because a mayor finally recognized him, but because humiliation could not make him cruel. He had been denied dignity at the door, yet when power returned to his hands, he used it to open a door for others. By Monday morning, the story had spread across Bellwether. The hotel released security footage before reporters could obtain it. The video showed Isaiah presenting his invitation, offering his identification, and standing calmly while the people at the entrance treated his very presence as deception. There was no shouting to distort, no aggressive movement to replay, only bias, visible in its ordinary clothes. Margaret Ellis held a press conference without Isaiah. She did not call the incident regrettable. She called it racist. She announced an independent review of hotel security, new reporting protections for staff, and a policy requiring managers to document every denied entry at private events. Then she did what Isaiah had asked. She spent her lunch breaks in the service corridors. She learned the names of dishwashers, housekeepers, maintenance workers, cooks, porters, and overnight cleaners. She discovered that employees of color were searched more often when leaving than white employees. She learned that guests had used racial insults against staff without consequence. She learned that workers entered through a loading dock that flooded whenever it rained. The first repair she authorized was not in the ballroom. It was at the service entrance. Dalton came to Mercer Street on Saturday at 6:52 in jeans and work boots. He brought no camera, no apology speech, only a toolbox. Isaiah handed him a ladder. For 6 hours, they repaired flashing along the east roof. They spoke little. At noon, Nia brought them sandwiches and studied Dalton with open suspicion. "Is he your friend?" she asked Isaiah. No, Dalton looked down. Isaiah added, "He's learning." Nia considered this. Then she handed Dalton a sandwich. It was not forgiveness, but it was food. The city council approved the library transfer unanimously. 3 council members who had delayed the proposal praised it as visionary. Isaiah let them speak. Then he displayed 14 months of unanswered emails on a projector behind them. The audience saw the dates. The council members stopped smiling. Renovation began in autumn. The old library's cracked stone was cleaned but not replaced. Isaiah wanted the building to keep some evidence of what it had survived. Above the entrance, workers installed a simple metal sign. The Laverne Brooks house, no corporate logo appeared beneath it. Arthur Vale kept his promise. So did the clinic director. So did Mayor Whitmore. Margaret sent hotel staff to volunteer, but Isaiah required them to work anonymously. Some painted walls. Others assembled beds. One chef designed a shared kitchen where residents could learn to cook. Dalton returned every Saturday, sometimes with his son. He never asked Isaiah whether he had been forgiven. Perhaps he understood that forgiveness was not a certificate issued after enough good behavior. It was something quieter, less certain, and not owed. 1 year after the gala, the Laverne Brooks house opened its doors. There were no chandeliers, no velvet ropes, no guards comparing faces to invitations. The lobby held second-hand couches, warm lamps, and a long wooden table built by teenagers from Mercer Street. 24 apartments waited upstairs for young adults who had aged out of foster care. Nia, wearing a purple dress and white sneakers, stood beside the front door. Mayor Whitmore arrived carrying the Holloway medal. Isaiah raised an eyebrow. "I told you to melt that down." "We did." She opened the velvet box. Inside lay a small brass key. The medal was recast. Isaiah lifted it from the box. It was heavier than it looked. "What does it open?" Eleanor smiled. "The front door." Outside, former foster youth, volunteers, neighbors, city workers, hotel employees, donors, and children gathered along the sidewalk. Margaret stood near the back. Dalton stood beside his son. No stage had been built. Isaiah did not give a speech. He walked to the entrance and placed the brass key in the lock. Then he stopped. Nia looked up at him. "What?" He removed the key and handed it to her. "You do it." Her eyes widened. "Me? You said people needed to see." She took the key with both hands. The crowd fell quiet. Nia turned it. The lock clicked. She pulled the door open. Warm light spread across the pavement. For a moment, no one moved. Then a young man named Caleb, 19 years old, carrying everything he owned in a canvas bag, stepped forward. He hesitated at the threshold. Isaiah stood to one side. No one asked for proof that he belonged. No one searched his bag. No one directed him around the back. Nia held the door wider. Caleb entered. Then another young woman followed. Then another. Isaiah remained beside the entrance as each person crossed into the light. The mayor watched him from the sidewalk. Margaret wiped her eyes. Dalton lowered his head. Above them, evening wind moved softly through the trees, carrying the smell of fresh paint and distant rain. Isaiah looked at the open door. He thought of his mother entering buildings through loading docks. He thought of the invitation torn into wet pieces. He thought of a hand gripping his arm and a ballroom waiting for him to become angry. Nothing could undo that night. Justice did not erase wounds. It gave them somewhere honest to lead. As darkness settled over Mercer Street, the new residents filled the rooms upstairs. Footsteps crossed polished floors. A kettle began to whistle in the shared kitchen. Someone laughed near an open window. Isaiah reached for the brass key, still resting in Nia's palm. Then he closed her fingers around it. The front door remained open, and in the warm light beyond it, no one had to ask permission to belong.